All right, welcome everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on another Go1 webinar where we talk to some of the more successful people that we've worked with in the way that they've implemented e-learning in general and also in the broad mix of learning at work. And today I have the pleasure of being joined by Emmett Pink from Oliver Agency. Thank you so much for joining us, Emmett.
Thank you.
I will ask him to introduce himself in a second, but I wanted to highlight that he is dealing with a really complex mix in his workplace. And we're really excited by the way in which Go1 forms a small part of that mix, but we hope a valuable part. And there's a lot of roadblocks to overcome on a journey to getting there. And so we wanted to record this today, and I wanted to pick Emmett's brain on what really makes effective e-learning sing and when e-learning can be right for the workplace and how you can overcome some of those difficulties. So I'll pull this down, and without further ado, we can get started.
Perfect. So, hello everyone. My name is Emmett Pink, and I am the head of management development and training at Oliver Agency. Oliver Agency is actually a part of a group of agencies. So back when I first started working with Go1, I was just working at Oliver Agency, but now I pretty much head up the global learning and development. And a big part of that has been because of Go1, and we've been really successful in kind of growing our kind of learning across the business and kind of all the different kind of training opportunities and growth opportunities that we have. So yeah, it's been a really great journey for the last year or so, and I think we're kind of progressing into year 2 and looking at growing even more. So yeah, it's been a great couple of years so far.
Well, I'm always glad to hear that it's been a good couple of years, but I'd love to learn a little bit more about Oliver Agency. What kind of a workplace is it?
Yeah, absolutely. So Oliver Agency is a very mixed workplace. So and especially now that quarantine and lockdown has happened, things have changed even more. But before lockdown and when I joined the business, it was a marketing and media agency, still is, but we had sort of a focus around kind of our UK employees and really establishing kind of learning and development kind of there in the business. When I first started, the business hadn't really seen anybody within a learning and development kind of position for almost 5 to 6 months. So training was a nice to have, but not necessarily a necessity. And kind of coming into the business, it was really kind of difficult to establish that. But since I joined the company, it's been over a year and it's almost 18 months now. The company's really grown. So we've expanded even through lockdown. And kind of when I started, we were primarily in the UK and Europe. But now we've really kind of grown out. We're in Dubai, we're across South Africa, we're all across Latam. We're now opening our offices in Mexico. Our North America and Canadian offices have really grown. And our business is quite unique in the fact that, prior to lockdown, our business model was all about working on the inside with our clients. So rather than your standard kind of agency where they kind of worked kind of on the outside and they worked in their own offices and kind of fed back to the client day to day, we're actually kind of on site with the client. We work amongst the client's teams, and it helps us better understand kind of their world, and we can obviously kind of operate faster, execute for them faster, because we know who they are and we live what they live, so we can kind of truly understand their culture. So it's a unique business model. What it will look like after lockdown is very, very different, because as we all know, we've all learned that you don't need to be in an office to continue working. So how that business model will change, I'm not sure, but we've been a very lucky company in that during lockdown we've grown more than we've needed to contract in terms of our employee base. So we've actually seen a lot more inductions, a lot more kind of new starters, which has been quite interesting to have to induct somebody and to have to introduce somebody to a team that they've never met or never spent any time with for almost 3 or 4 months. So it's been a funny old time to go through, but Go1's been kind of instrumental in supporting us through that kind of with the digital learning that we do have. So it's been good.
So you've got a whole bunch of stuff in normally lots of different places instead of one central place, which obviously makes kind of getting people to do the same learning difficult to start with. What are the systems that you had to that they have available to them to keep them kind of learning in the one cohesive, that culture together?
Yeah, so Funnily enough, we didn't have anything. So digital learning didn't exist until I joined the company. So that was just kind of the idea of having a digital platform was just something that blew a lot of people's minds, which was absolutely crazy for me. But kind of we have introduced a platform called Illumi, which is our sort of LMS system. But that is where we essentially now house all of our content. And that content is a real mix of not only Go1 kind of courses and different kind of training that people can take, but also we're able to import sort of resources from YouTube. We tend to house a lot of our documents on there as well, because people can kind of download directly from the system. And then it also houses kind of our training calendar. So for a lot of our different kind of individuals out kind of across the business, it tends to act as a kind of central intranet portal, because we've never had anything like that before. So it's really good that we can have sort of everything in one place, and it's all kind of fully branded across kind of all our agencies, so everyone kind of feels like it's the kind of one little home they can go to, which is great from an L&D perspective, because it also means kind of they're seeing kind of the L&D side of things every day, and it's kind of part of their everyday life, which is quite nice.
That's a really amazing thing to have, because we know that a lot of people talk about the challenges of developing a learning culture, and of getting learning front and center in front of people is one of the hardest battles that they can face at work. How did you get there? I guess, especially starting from scratch with no digital system.
Yeah, it was quite the fight. So when I came in, obviously, one of the first things I talked about was I didn't understand why everything was done sort of either via paper or face to face. And realistically, a lot of the arguments I tended to have with senior management was you either needed more of me or you needed to invest into something where I could deliver out and provide training, but not necessarily be in the room or kind of be with them, because I just wasn't able to be everywhere at once. Part of kind of my budget to be able to bring in anything digitally was born out of necessity. So during kind of my start with the company, we got our security license. I'm just trying to think of it. I can't remember the name, it escapes me, but it was something that we needed to have training to coincide with, to be compliant, to be able to get this security. So ISO 2001, I believe it's called. So it was the ISO 2001 that we needed to have. Many of our clients had that. And if you've ever gone through that process, it does require a lot of compliance training so that people understand kind of what goes into information security, how you can be compliant to ensure that your clients' documents are protected, and all these kind of essential items. So to be able to provide that compliant related training, I needed to find content. I'm very honest with the fact that if it's not my kind of subject matter area, I don't necessarily think I'm the expert that should be teaching it. I believe that people who are the experts in their field should teach, and learning and development should just be a way of facilitating that learning. So connecting people with kind of the teachers or the people who kind of know that kind of core information, rather than me trying to parrot it back and not actually have a proper understanding of it. So I made that very clear with our senior management, and noted that we needed to find this sort of compliance training, this information security. So I started a bit of a journey. I had a very small budget to begin with. I had 4,000K to make everything work, which is a system and all of the digital content that needed to go into it. And realistically, I knew that wasn't going to happen, but I needed to get out there and have kind of lots of just different discussions. So one of the discussions I had was with Ratchet in the Czech Republic. I went to a convention, and I actually didn't meet him kind of at a vendor table or anything like that. We were actually just having a discussion around dinner, and what kind of I really liked about Go1 when we got into the discussion around what I needed about compliance was there were so many other bits and pieces and features that you guys could offer that all were part of kind of the one license, and that was kind of really the appeal. So when I went back to senior management, what what really kind of helped and aided my discussion was I was able to present not only kind of a valid offer with kind of the additional money I needed to pay for it, but also on top of my £4,000, which would have paid for nothing, but also I was able to kind of really push home that not only could we deliver on kind of our what we needed from a compliance perspective, but also we could really kind of upskill and kind of push our employee base all for the same price. And that was a really easy sell for many of the senior leadership. So that was kind of really, really helpful in terms of just the way Go1 packages everything and puts it all together in one place, rather than having to go to one provider for one thing and another provider to another thing. So I think I've answered your question, hopefully. I've rambled for a little bit.
No, that's great, because it's fascinating to see the transition there from, I guess, stick to carrot approach for a lot of things as well, with, we need to do this compliance. And that's where we honestly talk to people the most, is they go, we need to have bullying and harassment, we need to have these security compliance, we need information technology, we need that. And we go, okay, we've got all of that. But to hear the growth narrative that you're talking about with senior leadership is really fascinating to me. How long did it actually take to get them to come on that journey with you after you encountered it?
So I think I think in truth, the length took about 7 months from start to finish. So if you imagine the first month, somebody came up to me and said, you've been given money. It was my £4,000, make it work. And then to 7 months down the line, I was able to kind of brief them and say, look, this is realistically what we should be doing. Part of that growth journey, what helped to aid it was many of the discussions I was having with stakeholders it was always like, well, with any business, there is always going to be that soft skill element where your kind of management team needs to be upskilled. Our business is quite unique in that about 80% of our workforce are creative, and they kind of work in creative roles. And to be honest, because somebody is within a creative role doesn't always mean that they're going to be a fantastic people manager. So usually that's where they need kind of the most upskilling, is kind of making that transition from being like a fantastic creative and really great at kind of doing artworks and things like that, and then moving across to actually working with other individuals, helping them manage through their stresses and also be sort of that support function for them. So that was kind of a big need within our business that I was always talking to a lot of senior leaders about. But the other side of it that was also an issue was then we had this whole creative piece where we had individuals who were in their roles, but they weren't really kind of pushing forward and being able to go above and beyond for our clients, because they weren't really growing in kind of their knowledge or skill set when it came to the creative tools they were using. So that was another really big need within the business. And because it was coming up so much with my stakeholders, that was really able to kind of aid me when I kind of pushed back in terms of what we really needed. So whilst I was able to push back and say, yes, we need this compliance piece, I was able to also articulate and illustrate the fact that we had a whole set of managers who were just not able to support their staff appropriately. And because of that, we weren't actually meeting the client needs and deadlines and requirements as well as we could be, because these managers weren't able to provide their support. And then there was this whole other piece of, we wanted to be able to really kind of be innovative and deliver more for our clients, but we weren't kind of creating the opportunities for our people to upskill themselves so that they could go above and beyond. And that's what really kind of factored into those discussions. And once again, that whole discussion I had with Ratchet, where he was able to say, oh yeah, we've got this and we've got that and we've got that. It was very, very different to every other vendor that we spoke with, because every other vendor they could kind of fit one piece of the puzzle, but then I had to kind of source another piece of the puzzle. And obviously a lot of these discussions initially I was having with this £4,000 in the back of my mind. So I was like, well, that'll pay for half of that, and then I've got nothing for this section and this section. So it was all about trying to work out a way that I could really kind of position it so that it was kind of beneficial for the business. And learning development, sadly, is always one of those areas where it is a bit less tangible in terms of people can't necessarily see the need for it. So yeah, it is kind of a difficult one to kind of sell across. So yeah, that's kind of where we went with the growth set. It was just, there was so much needed in the business, and we've made a lot of changes because of what we've brought in, which has been really good.
How do you deal, I guess, with the other problem that comes with that much choice though, which is the paralysis of choice? How do you decide what and curate down for your learners? Because I can't imagine giving them the entire library would be particularly effective when they've got so much to do all the time.
No, it's a really good question. So one of the things that I really liked about the system that we brought in, Illumi, it was one of the kind of deciding factors that we brought it in, is everything on the system is, we can send it out either via job role. So whether they're in kind of a creative position, we can send it out based on region, or we can send it out based on or client site. So for example, if there are particular materials that are only relevant to one client site, maybe the client wants to keep it confidential because it's related to them, then we're able to push that out individually. There is, and I'm very aware of the fact that kind of sometimes, I always call it the Netflix effect, where you get on and you just scroll through so much and then you just get bored and then you're like, I can't be bothered now. So I was very conscious when we introduced the system that when we rolled content out, only the creatives saw kind of the creative content, only senior managers saw kind of management content, and then we worked on kind of a request basis. So it was very much a case of, if somebody wanted to upskill in management, we went through a bit of a process that they had to kind of let me know, but then I was able to also let their manager know that they had started this process. And then kind of with the reporting on the back end, we were able to feed back how much content they'd completed. So that then kind of fed into sort of our performance appraisals in terms of this person's completed this much upskilling by themselves, as well as for those managers who were like, I am looking to promote them, what have they done to kind of improve their knowledge, where I was able to feedback and say this module's been completed. For those employers as well who wanted kind of additional content, we've very much got a policy of like, we don't say no to anybody, but it's a case of letting us know. So if there's an employee out there who wants photography, they just need to let me know, and if we don't have the content, we'll import it in, and that way they can kind of upskill themselves. So we always try and keep learning in terms of, it's either the employee's choice because that's something they want to do and they're interested in, as well as there are parts where we say, well, actually you need to obtain this bit of knowledge or this skill before we can kind of progress you to the next role. So that's how we kind of use the system and kind of reduce that like too much choice factor kind of down, if that makes sense.
It's actually a really fascinating and effective way of breaking it down, because it looks like, because it sounds like you don't have too big a team helping you there.
No, I used to have one employee who helped me, but she's now on maternity leave. Coming out of lockdown and with the possibility of a recession, the discussion of getting somebody else in to kind of cover her has been squashed down for the time being. So yeah, it is pretty much just me. The system we use and bringing in content is relatively easy. So thankfully, I've been able to teach many of our HR admins how to do it. And now pretty much because I've taught them how, they sort of do it all just as I request. And I don't really have to manage much of the back end actions, which is quite nice. But yeah, not a big team at all. It's just me really. So yeah.
That's quite a common story that we hear these days as well, as organizations of 500, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000 people have a couple or one person heading up and spearheading their L&D, and they're often at odds end to try and figure out the balance there. But it sounds like you found a nice balance between what is the manager's responsibility, what is the individual employee's responsibility, and then what is your responsibility in that kind of chain of learning. How long did it take you to get there and to get people to act in that way? Or are you there yet? I guess is probably a better question.
I'm more there now post lockdown than I am before. And it kind of, again, born out of sort of necessity. It's one of those things where you just have to be really strong and kind of push back. So for myself, being a team of one, like if it's not worth my time and it is something that like a manager or somebody else can do, but maybe they're kind of referring to me because they're just a little bit scared to do it, then it is very much, I'll try and focus much more on just coaching them through it, rather than saying, yeah, I'll do this for you, because realistically, if I try and do that with all the employees we have, I'm just never going to get anything done. So yeah, it has come from, I've just had to be very strong, and sometimes, and even with some very senior people, I've just said, no, like, I don't have time for this. And strangely enough, once you say that once or twice, these people find time to do it themselves. So it's just a matter of, thankfully, I'm a little bit more confident in that area. And I think as well, my line manager is very supportive and very aware of kind of my position in terms of, it's just me supporting a global employee base. So I don't do it in a rude way, but yeah, it's just about being kind of confident and kind of knowing how to say no in the right way, which is sometimes just about really helping people understand your position and why you can't support them when it is potentially something they can do themselves. Maybe they're just being a little bit lazy, or maybe they just kind of don't want to. So yeah, pushing back has been the key, I think.
I think that helps people. I actually had a similar experience at Go1 where I joined, and I'm from a agile production background. I'm used to, here is the sprint, here is the work we do. And one of the first things in my role was to put a project plan in front of our senior executive and say, this is what I'm doing for the next 9 months. And so my immediate manager was like, this is not in business language, this is in creative agile language. And so he said, you have to go and before we progress you through this, you're going to have to do these learning items, and you're going to have to find the learning that you need to fill the gaps, but here is how. I found it very effective. It sounds like a very similar journey to what your employees are going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think with a lot, well, especially in my business, a lot of the times the word training comes up and then instantly, like, my name is brought up and I should be the one to run it. I should be the one to do it. It's absolutely not the case. So it's very much a case of, I try and kind of get people back to that idea that I was mentioning kind of early on of, if you're the expert, you're the best person to teach this. And a lot of my time now is spent kind of talking people through what it is I actually support with. So I'm very much on the side of, I'll teach you to be the trainer, and I'll support you with whatever content you need to produce in terms of putting it in a language that's understandable, or putting it in a format that someone can digest in terms of learning. But at the end of the day, if you're the person on the front line and this is what you live and breathe every day, why would I be talking to someone else through it? Because if they ask a question, or if they want to kind of drill down on the knowledge that you have, you're going to be better placed to kind of articulate what it is that needs to be said. So that's where a lot of kind of my training has moved to now. It's very much like, I'm here to facilitate learning. I'm not here to actually be the teacher. The teachers are those people in the business who have been living it for X amount of years, or do it every day, and are kind of natural experts at it.
So the last thing I always love to break down with people is, what does the rollout actually look like for implementing a huge learning library amongst everything else for you? Like, what did the first, what was the order in which you did a lot of these things?
Absolutely. I think for me, it was, especially for our business, it was about getting people as excited as possible. So what and being a smaller team kind of with the setup, when we were putting content onto our LMS, I focused on the content that was going to get people excited rather than the content that was necessary, if that makes sense. So absolutely, those compliance modules that I talk about, they were always kind of there first and ready. But kind of the next step was kind of really pulling down on kind of what people were excited about doing. And I made that the focus for kind of launching the product, with the idea that additional kind of training would follow. So for us, a lot of the Adobe content Go1 has, especially around After Effects, that's always a massive one with animators. People were like excited, chomping at the bit about that. So every day I was pretty much communicating out about kind of the launch of this system, but where kind of the communications were really focusing on was every day it was this has just been added, or we've just brought this in, and I kept talking about kind of the different titles that were coming onto the system, and kind of talking about like how much content would be available when it actually launched. And I found that was a really great way to do it, because so often I was getting messages every day saying, when is it launching? When is it launching? And I'd be replying back to this email saying launching in 10 days. But it just obviously meant that it had really kind of built that excitement. And then once it had actually launched, something that I did through the system is our system can push notifications when a new piece of content has been added. So every time that we would kind of bring a new kind of new program in of kind of modules focusing on a particular learning area, we would really kind of make a big fanfare about it and really announce it. And people loved that because they were able to kind of see what was coming into the system. For us as well, as I mentioned, it was very sectional. We didn't want people to log in and see everything all at once, but we were still sending out those communications that content was available. You just had to ask for it. And that was a nice way to see as well kind of what people were interested in. So if people were really pushing for kind of like a leadership module that had been mentioned, we made some of those modules accessible to all, because we were able to see really where people wanted to start kind of learning, even if it was kind of across the board, versus those kind of pieces of content we wanted to keep separate so people didn't kind of think there was too much. So it was, yeah, a very universal approach in terms of, hey everyone, this is everything that's coming in, but at the same time, when people actually logged in, they weren't kind of freaked out by too much choice and didn't spend all their time kind of searching through. They were able to navigate straight to the pieces of content they wanted.
Fantastic. And I guess that I always hear people who've experienced e-learning through, say, the 90s and the 2000s with quite a negative outlook on e-learning. They remember it as here is the text document that you need to skip through and then answer the questions, and we know that you're fire safe or that you've done your bullying and harassment. Well, I love to flip that on its head a bit, given the place that e-learning's at now, and especially with your experience through COVID. I'd love to learn, what is your proudest or most effective moment with online learning so far in your workplace? What have you looked at and gone, I want to do more of that?
Proudest moment. So what we've leveraged quite a lot is a lot of your kind of micro learning that you have through Go1. And I think for that, it has also kind of helped us in terms of the content we produce. I typically now have rules if anyone wants to bring content onto the system, in terms of it's not allowed to go over a certain amount of length. If it does, then you need to create a series. So you need to have 4 or 5 videos. And I think it's really down to that fact that people are on Facebook, they're on Instagram. We seem to consume content very, very quickly now, and we don't want to spend too much time on one subject. So we seem to want to switch and move on. And I know myself, like I'll be on email, but I'll also be kind of on another website, or I'll be looking at something else. And like, for whatever reason, we've just got ourselves into that pattern of learning all over the place. So with COVID-19 and lockdown, I was just really happy to have Go1 in place already, because so many of our employees, they went from kind of relying on a lot of workshops and things that we did, and you could actually see like the amount of usage really spiked as soon as kind of COVID happened. For our furloughed employees, we were able to put kind of furloughed packages together. So things like just kind of helping them think about, these are areas you can upskill on. So we had lots of people who weren't in project management roles, but whilst they were furloughed, we encouraged them to take the Prince 2 learning that you have on the system. So I'm pretty sure that kind of coming out of lockdown, we're going to have like 70 people who are going to go out and try and get their qualification, which is going to hit my budget pretty hard. But it does mean we're going to have all these really kind of skilled employees, and that has been really, really nice, that even though people have been furloughed, they've known that we have this system where there is loads and loads and loads of content that they can access. And as I mentioned, we as much as possible try and focus on those micro courses so people can consume it quickly and then they can kind of move on. But where people have really loved it is kind of those bigger courses where they know they can go kind of take a qualification. I also wanted to mention something, it's not so much learning, but it was just where Go1 really kind of saved our butts and helped us so much was obviously with lockdown, many people couldn't go to the gym. Mental health was a really big focus for our organization because we were very concerned about burnout. And something I was able to do with Go1 was I actually was able to import a lot of fitness content, which has nothing to do with anything we do as a business, but people loved it. And it just meant that, like, as a company, we were able to respond in a really positive way and say, look, you can't get to the gym, but here is some yoga content, here's some fitness content you can access. I think I did a bit of digging as well. I found some cake making courses, which have been super popular. Around Easter, I found like an egg painting course, but it meant that we could go back to our parents who are stuck at home with their kids and say, here's an egg making course, like your kid won't be bored for like a little while. So it's just been really great in terms of, whilst it wasn't content that we need as a business, because it came as part of the package, it was something we were able to roll out, and our engagement score actually, so we use Peakon, which gives you an aggregate score from your employees from the business. So we as a company, we, before lockdown happened, had a Peakon score growth goal of 8.0. Before lockdown, we were at 7.7. We're now at 8.1. So we had a massive spike during lockdown. So we were actually able to show that our employees became more engaged during lockdown than they ever were before, which is scary, but it does mean that because we were able to support with this content, people really felt like the business was kind of giving back and did feel like the business was supporting them. So it's a bit off tangent, but I just thought it was worth mentioning because it had such a big impact, and it was the fact that we were able to do that so quickly and so easily just made a massive difference.
Oh no, that's fantastic to know as well, because we're always a little bit unsure when we bring on, say, like the how to make your own beer provider, or the provider that's looking at, you know, how do you Power Yoga, I think, is one of the top courses. Despite all of what managers would want out of their employees, I think it's right up there.
Yeah, I think businesses just forget that, like, people, whilst they do their job, they are people as well. So it's always nice when you can give a little extra perk, and like adding in one additional video on yoga on the system, on our system, that means nothing to me, but it means so much more to our employees. And yeah, just as I said, the fact that I was able to do that within half an hour, and I was able to be like, here's 40 plus hours of fitness and yoga that anyone can access 24/7. People like went gangbusters over it. And yeah, I still get emails to this day going, thank you so much for all the support during lockdown. And to be honest, I didn't really do a whole lot. I just imported the video, but people love me for it, and it's just because that content was available. So it does make a difference. You don't always know you need it until you need it, but yeah, when it's there and you can access it, it's amazing.
I think that's a fantastic spot for us to start wrapping it up. So I'll pull up the thank you for watching. So from here, I just really want to say thank you so much for your time. Thank you for people who watch this later. And I really want to highlight the amazing work that you've done, because we're really just a tool at the end of the day. And we're only as good as people who put the system in place, and the systems that you've put in there to make the most of a library is just incredible. It's been really great to hear all about it. So thank you so much, man.
No, thank you. As I mentioned, it's made such a difference, especially with lockdown happening and things like that. It means we've been able to be a really kind of agile company. So it's made me very happy, made my boss very happy. So we like that. So yeah, I'm looking forward to our second year. As I mentioned, we've kind of grown now. I think we've now expanded to 2,000 employees. So yeah, it's gonna be good. We're kind of rolling it out in the TAM in the next couple of weeks. So I'm excited for them to be able to kind of access the content as well.